There's no bad child. You may have a child that's behaving badly. It's not because the child is bad, it's because the child lacks skills, certain skills in terms of how they should be showing up, either because they were not taught or they were not taught properly in a way that they can understand. The human brain, right, will always search out the crisis, the things that are wrong. You have to intentionally shift your brain.
Right.
Acknowledge the good. And it's the same thing in marriage. The leading cause of divorce is not adultery, and it is, they say, irreconcilable differences. And how do people get there? It is literally, you stop acknowledging the good until you both get to the point where you don't see any good in each other anymore.
Welcome to the CEO podcast. If you've joined us in the last episode, you heard Pastor Olawunmi Brigue's incredible journey of finding love, healing, and hope. Today, we could continue that conversation, but we shift our focus to one of the most important callings in life, parenting. From working in education in the UK to coaching women and men globally, Pastor Olawunmi has poured into countless lives with wisdom and grace. I know that this episode will be another one that will be a true blessing to you in your parenting journey. Pio, welcome back, and I'm glad to have you again. Without further ado, let's get into it. Can you tell us a bit about your journey? How did you transition from being a teacher in the UK to being a transformational life coach?
So I was in education for about 15, 14, thereabout years altogether. And towards the end of that time, that season, I started to feel this discomfort, sort of like just that there was more, I had no interpretation. I mean, hindsight is 2020. I didn't know what I was feeling. What I did know for sure was a profession that I'd loved and enjoyed and had, good amount of success in, all of a sudden just did not feel satisfying anymore. And I couldn't understand. And I knew that I wasn't necessarily, okay, go and get another job, or, oh, I'm stuck, I'm not progressing. Because literally, I had just gotten, into senior leadership, the thing that, that I'm like, okay, I have to do this. I just achieved a massive goal. So it wasn't like, oh, I'm stuck or I'm stagnant. No, I'm like, why should I be feeling like? So I knew it wasn't ambition in terms of why I should be progressing more. Everything just went flat. I just didn't, the desire was gone, etc. So I did the only thing I knew to do. I started to pray and ask God. I wasn't praying, okay, let me change jobs. I didn't know what to pray, so I literally just pray in the spirit. And I dedicated an hour. So my commute at the time, door to door, was about an hour. So I said, okay, apart from my normal prayer time, etc., I would just pray in the spirit under my breath for that 1 hour commute. And that's what I did. And I did that for weeks. And then I started to gain insight into God saying, there's more that I have for you beyond the four walls of a building, influence and the impact. And that was basically what happened in terms of the transition. And, I sort of graduated it, started off by dropping leadership responsibilities to only be a teacher, and then went part-time, and then eventually left to go and run my business full time.
Awesome. So take a cue from these people. Praying in the spirit helps a lot. It's very useful in the life of a believer. You've worked in senior leadership in education. You alluded to that, and you were known for turning children's lives around. What foundational beliefs guided your approach in working with children?
That's interesting. I think the most important one for me is that there's no bad child. There's no bad child. You may have a child that's behaving badly.
Mm-hmm.
It's not because the child is bad. It's because the child lacks skills, certain skills in terms of how they should be showing up, either because they were not taught or they were not taught properly in a way that they can understand. So for me, that foundational understanding would never allow me to condemn any child and say, this is just a bad child. This child is, we are beyond redemption or whatever. I look at it with I'm quite an analytical and objective kind of person. And I look at it from a very objective point of view, like, okay, what skills is this child lacking? So is it, lack of emotional control? Is it lack of self-awareness or whatever it is that is allowing this child, that is prompting this child to show up in this way? And how can we help the child build those skills so that they can start to show up differently? Now, it's not as easy as I'm saying it. It's a very difficult and long process because it is a human being at the end of the way. At the end of the day, once a habit is formed in any human being, it takes rigor. I mean, think about yourself. You know, a lot of us, let me use maybe weight loss as an example. Say, oh, I'm never eating that again. My life. So imagine, or something like anger. Oh, I can't believe I shouted at my children again, my husband again. I won't do it again. And then, so if it starts to give you that empathy that, well, you can't just say, stop doing that. And then the child all of it, just because she says, stop doing that, the
You
child
should
just
stop.
stops doing it like it's magic. No, there's a habit that's been formed
Hmm.
and it's going to take time and consistency, right? And structure to reform the habit or to change the habit. So you have to be patient, which is what a lot of parents don't have. They want to use the fire brigade kind of approach
Mm.
to it, or they want to use self-pity. Oh, why is my child behaving like this? God, can you not look upon my affliction? It has nothing to do with all that. Stop, being emotional about all these things. Sit down and identify what are the things that need to change. And honestly, if you're willing as a parent to turn the spotlight on yourself, and say, when the child was 2, did you put routines in place? Or did you just hand the child the tablets all day and let them do what they want? Now the child cannot sit down for 2 minutes. They keep calling you from school because the child is so disruptive. He or she can't sit down for 5 minutes without jumping out and, it's very difficult. So you have to ask those questions and be honest enough to say, "Okay, maybe we didn't put the right things in place, but it's never too late to start putting those things." I mean, when I say never too late, the child is 18, 19, 20 now. You're not going to um
Hmm.
use prayer after that point.
Yeah.
Because your influence has significantly diminished in the life of that child. The older a child gets, by the time they get into adulthood, you know,
Yeah. Okay. Oh, wow. I like that. There are no bad children. I really like that. And I think in our climb in Africa, it's like this child is a bad child. You don't obey instructions. You can't follow simple instructions. But now, if you think about it, the fact that you've been trying to change some things in your life and you're still struggling,
yeah.
you'll be able to show mercy and empathize with the child. That's really good. So, how about you give us one of your most powerful transformations that you witnessed in a child, and what role, in this case, it would be intentional teaching play in that process?
I mean, there's many so this one example that I'm going to give would literally be, loads of children that fit into the same box. So, not necessarily one person, one example.
Hmm.
But I mean, in my work over the 3 years that I was a teacher and a leader, because I was a pastoral leader, meaning that my job was more towards the behavioral, social aspect of the child's development rather than the academic. So I went down the pastoral route in terms of leadership. And of course, it is the sort of badly behaved, the ones that can't stay, the ones that every teacher in the school has kicked out like this. They would usually come to me. They will send them to me. The ones that so let me see. The so children that have come, or a child that has come to the point where they almost hate everybody. They're so rebellious that they just, and a lot of times it's coming from self-hate. They don't see anything good in themselves because everywhere they turn, people are telling them you're bad, you're horrible, you're rude, you're disrespectful. So they're hearing all these things, which keeps feeding into their self-image, how they see themselves. And it's just, and no, there's no human being that so Tosin, if I look at you now and I say, you're rude, or you're whatever, or I say something, and if there's even an element of you believing that thing, it's going to do something to you. It's going
Right.
to make you feel bad about yourself. Now imagine you keep hearing that over and over again. It's making it turn into self-hate. You start to loathe yourself. And the more I loathe myself, the more I'm going to kick off. Because you can't give what you don't have. If I loathe myself, I'm only going to loathe the people in my life. So the worst ones would be situations where that child has gotten to that point where they believe that there's nothing good about them. And so the slightest thing would, throw them off. And the way that I always overcame those resistances within, let's say that particular child or group of children, is to first of all begin to show the child that there's something good in them. And in a very practical way now, I'm not talking as a parent, I'm talking literally as a teacher or as a leader in school. What I would do is to start to create a connection. Connection is very important, right? Create a connection, find a common point, something we can agree on, where the child will say, yes, that's true. Because I'm not going to compromise and say the fact that you threw that chair at the teacher is okay. I can understand you're angry. No, I'm not going to say that. You're wrong and you soon get expelled. You give baby like that, they will throw you out. And if I'm the one that will sign the thing, giving them permission to throw you out of the school, right? So I'm not going to lie and say, oh, that's okay. I understand you. No, 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 no. But for example, one very simple example, there was a particular boy that was just like fireball. And my entry point was football or soccer for those in the United States. Was football. Like I used to be massively into football. I had, supported this team and so on. And I would, say, oh, your team played and we would just, and literally just by having conversations about football, there was something because we gravitate towards people that sort of are accepting of us. Even though in the beginning, he saw me as this authority figure. Oh, here we go again. They've sent me to Mr. Rumi's, office or whatever. But just that connection, that acceptance of this woman actually accepts something about me, sees something good in me that is neutral, right? Gave me an entry point, a platform to then begin. So whatever else I needed to teach him, or to
Right.
show him about how this is impacting you negatively, helped him open up to even receive that in the first, because he was at the point where no, he was not listening. He wasn't even listening to his parents. His parents did not have any kind of, quote unquote control over him anymore by that point. So just seeing good and speaking to that good is always a good entry point.
Right. Wow. It's a key that we all need to imbibe, and even with our children, right? It's very easy for parents to talk at their children and keep badgering
And
them.
as a parent, I understand that because you want the best for your children. So you want to sort of smoothen out all the rough edges just so that, they go into society and they're responsible adults and all of that. But the human brain, right, will always search out the crisis, the things that are wrong. So you have to intentionally turn your brain and say there's more than this 2% that is wrong in this. There's 98% that's really
That's
going
right.
well.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
98. So you have to intentionally acknowledge that, okay, okay, fine. He did the kitchen and it was not this, still not. But the fact that he showed up and actually did it. Some children, they will not even answer you if their parents tell them, go and wash up the dishes or whatever. So it may not be exactly as I would have done it. It may not be as clean, right? And has put together. But the fact that when I said go and do it, he got up immediately, or so you have to intentionally shift your brain,
Right.
acknowledge the good. And it's the same thing in marriage. The leading cause of divorce is not adultery, and it is, they say, irreconcilable differences. And how do people get there? It is literally you stop acknowledging the good until you both get to the point where you don't see any good in each other anymore. That's divorce right there. That's it. You can't see any good. You've been so focused on the bad, on the things the person is doing wrong, that even if somebody says, yeah, but this person's helping you, it's like, what's that? Like, you would dismiss it. So yeah, it's a principle that really does work.
Yeah. What you focus on gets magnified, right? Yeah.
And if you keep focusing, it will become your reality and shut everything else out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a distorted reality because you now don't see other parts.
As someone who works closely with family, we've talked about this, but I want us to extract more clearly for people. How would you define parenting God's way? Because I hear people who say, I want to parent God's way. What does that look like? What does that mean?
This is probably the shortest answer I'm going to give. The person if you say God's way, then go and get his manual. But there's no way for us to know God outside of his word. So there's no way for us to know his way of parenting outside of the Bible. So what are the principles that are taught us in the word of God? So that is what it means to parent God's way. If you learn, simple things like train up a child in the way that they should go, that is already putting the responsibility on the parent to train not just to
Right.
raise a child, to train. Training means you have regiments, you put things in place. There are systems, there are teachings, there are all kinds of things you put to shape,
Mm.
right, the life of that child, and to put certain things in so that that's why it says when they're old, they will not depart, because you have already blocked some things into the life of that child. Some things have been ingrained so that when they then now get to the point where they're making their own decisions, the decisions they're making are aligned with how they have been raised. Yeah, there's so many, wisdom nuggets in the Bible and clear pathways in terms of how we can parent. So when I say God's way is not, is literally study the word of God.
Yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking about Isaac and Abraham, and it occurred to me that when Abraham went to sacrifice Isaac, the boy was a grown man and could have carried himself up from the sacrifice table. Be like, you're not killing me today. But it has to be that there has been that training that we submit ourselves to God regardless. And awesome. So from your experience, what are the biggest struggles that parents are facing in this generation?
Presence. I think that's the most important thing. There's so many things competing for our time, our attention, that it's very difficult to be present. Parents love their children, right? A parent will give everything for their children, but a lot of times everything but what is really needed. And it is time. Time. It's time. Time and attention. Those are the biggest currencies that you can invest in your children. And I know that it's also the most difficult that we can invest, because everything is sucking the time, everything is sucking the attention. But you just, and it doesn't mean quit your job, stay at home, we're talking about 30 minutes, an hour. Take just that presence. It goes a long way. It's very important. I think that's the thing we struggle with the most, and technology is not helping, right?
No.
Because we all are inclined to take the easy way out, which is to use technology or whatever it is, but time and attention.
Wow. So you can take out an hour in a day. And does that seem like it's enough? Because if I think about a parent who's here beating themselves up, I don't have that much time. I'm too busy. How can a parent be present in the moment? Do the children know? Does it start to translate to them that I get it? My parents, they were very busy, but they were present.
Yeah, because it's a cumulative effect. It's not you have your child with you, I don't know, maybe in the US till 18 or something,
Mhm.
or longer if they choose to stay at home while they're still going to university or something like that. But it's a cumulative effect. It's not a do 10 hours in one day and then no, even if it's just 15 minutes, it's a consistency. And of course, for it to work and to accumulate, there has to be a plan and structure behind it.
Mhm.
Right? So it is no matter how busy we are as parents, you can give 15 minutes. 15
Mhm.
minutes. Even if that 15 minutes is okay, I'm going to sit down with this child and we're going to, depends on how old the child is. 2 minutes to have a conversation about how school went, or sit down and do homework together, or you and meet, or whatever, right? So it doesn't have to be because you feel like it's sacrifice. As the Bible says that obedience is better than sacrifice. What that simply means in this context is for you to show up and do something is better than waiting for when I can sacrifice and give 10 hours. Can you do 10 minutes? If 10 minutes genuinely is what you can afford based on how full your life is right now, give it and give it
Mm.
consistently. Don't compromise on it, and it will go a long way.
What's your idea or your belief on discipline? Excuse me. What's your view on it, and how do we discipline children without breaking that child's spirit?
That's because discipline, a lot of people, when they think of discipline, they think of punishment,
Okay.
right?
Is it
I
not
want
the
to
same thing?
discipline a child. Okay, this child did something wrong,
Hmm.
and I want to punish the child, right? I want to quote unquote discipline this child back into shape. But to discipline, I prefer to use the word train, which has teaching in it.
Good.
So let's use a very simple example. The child was rude. He said, I want to quote unquote discipline this child. Okay, sure. that was wrong. You shouldn't be rude. You shouldn't, whatever. But a lot of times say, go to your room or bring your iPad or whatever. And that is discipline. But
Mm-hmm.
it's so incomplete. There are four pillars of training. And one of them is the teaching, right? It's the teaching, which is you just, discipline or punish the child and say, this is wrong. But do you sit down to teach the child?
Mm.
Right? You teach them the why. Do you take them through the process? Because the easiest way for a child to learn or anybody to learn is to show them the why. Show them the why repeatedly and long enough, they will start to alter their own behavior. Not just the what, not just is wrong. Don't be rude. Why should you not be rude? Why? What consequences is it creating that, etc., etc. So teaching is also part of that training. It's not just the discipline, which is lay down the rule of law, right? Routines, putting structure in place is also another pillar.
Mm.
So you don't just sit them down for 5 minutes to say, okay, this is why. So you're teaching now to say, this is why. You have to put things in place and not wait until the child is rude again. So that gap in between, we tend to not do anything until the thing happens again. You have an emotional reaction again and you're angry at this time because didn't I tell you 2 weeks ago? But between the 2 weeks, you've not done anything. You've not put any kind of structure in place to enable the child not to show up that way again. So you can
Mm.
see why I said time and attention is really what is
Mhm.
letting us down.
Okay, so how do you advise parents, especially single parents or those parenting from a place of brokenness or trauma, to rise above guilt and self doubt?
I don't think that's peculiar to those experiencing trauma or single. I think everybody experiences guilt. Everybody has experienced some kind of trauma at some level. The thing is, you already have this child. You already have these children. You rise up and do what you're supposed to do, what you're meant to do. This the same person that might say, "Oh, I can't really show up for my kids the way I would want to because I have trauma." I will get up and go to work
True.
because there's money involved at the end of it. You just have to look at it like it's a responsibility that I have. Just because nobody's going to beat you if you don't show up for your children, and the consequence is more immediate and more adverse
Mm-hmm.
with something like work. If no matter how tired you are. So if you're tired and you're lying on your bed and your child says, Mommy, will you read for me for 5 minutes? You are tired, you're leaving alone. But if an email comes in and says there's a presentation and oh my God, you get up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You will get up.
Priorities.
You will
Yeah.
do. You won't say I'm tired, I'm not going to because they can fire you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you just sometimes we sort of put things that quote unquote and it happens with marriage as well because you know that these are the ones that love you, they will easily forgive you. It doesn't really, the world's not going to crash if I don't show up and do these things because they are my family, they love me, etc. But if we do that long enough, I mean, the cracks are going to start to show. The same way if you behave that way at work, eventually they will sack the person. It's the same thing.
Okay. So why is affirming identity so crucial for children and how can parents do this effectively?
It's words. And, use your words to affirm, to tell them who they are. And don't use your words to attack who they are. Correct the behavior. Don't attack the identity.
Mm.
Speak to the what, not the who. Don't say you're a stupid child.
Mm.
You're so stupid, right? No. The thing they did may have been silly or stupid or unwise. Talk to that and say, that was not very wise.
Mm-hmm.
Do that again, you can burn down the whole house. Don't do it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean the child is stupid. It doesn't mean the child is
Right.
angry. An angry child, you're just a stubborn child,
Okay.
etc. You're just rude. No. Yeah, because those words are speaking directly
Mm.
to the
To
identity, who the
identity.
child is. And the more you do that, the more the child will show up that way. You have to learn to dissociate who from the what because the behavior is not the child. The behavior is coming out of an identity that may have already been established, but if you change the identity, the behavior will change. So they're two completely different things. So as best as you can, it's not easy. And sometimes you have to catch yourself and say, I should not have said that. And then go back and reaffirm the child. I'm not saying it as if there's anybody out there that's probably getting it right 100%, but at least do the best you can. Words are the most powerful ones, to be honest. Words, the Bible talks about how words go deep into the soul. Something somebody said to you 15 years ago, you can still, recall it. You can, when you can still remember and you create the same emotions. It's like that powerful.
Right.
So in affirming our children, words are very important.
I thought about this meme that I've seen on social media recently about how African parents don't apologize to their children. They would go round and round, but just to say that I am sorry is the big issue for. Please help our African parents. How do they say?
I don't know. I don't know the thing about that. Even I think it was just the way. And honestly, I don't judge because
Mm-hmm.
my parent. I love my parents. My parents were not perfect, far from it, right? They are, But the way I look at it is, my parents did the best they need to do with what they had and what they knew, right? I can't judge them because I didn't grow up in the house they grew up in. I didn't have the experiences they had. So how dare I? Until I walked in somebody's shoes perfectly, I have no right to judge them. I have no right. Because from where you're standing, you can say, that's wrong. I can never do that. Okay, let us take you through the entire second and minutes and hours of their life, everything they've experienced up until that point. Let's see whether you will make a different choice or not. You
Mm.
have no right. You probably most 100% will make exactly the same choice that they made, given your exposure, everything they've so with regards to that, I think it was just not it was not deemed as a good thing for you to be overtly emotional with your children. You have to, I don't know what the rationale, but unfortunately, if you grow up in that kind of environment, you tend to imbibe it. So I'm not the most like emotional is not the word, but expressive. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
the word. I'm not the most expressive even till today. Right. I had to get over even people like hugging me, even my own husband or my children hugging me. I'm like, they'll hug me and hold. I say, okay, it's enough now. Why are you holding on so tightly? Just light hug and release. Which one is all this holding? Like, so and it's not, it's because I don't recall.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see? So it's how I was raised.
Mm-hmm.
So you just have to, once you come into an awareness of this thing is not necessarily serving, just because it is how it has been, does not mean it is how it should be or it should
Mm-hmm.
continue to be. Once you start to be aware of that, you start to make changes, right? So if you know that your parents never apologize to you and you have the same tendency, you don't want to apologize to your kids, you instead you want to say, have you eaten? Have you eaten? And so what happened at school today? To be dancing around the thing. Once
Peaceful.
you're aware that that's what you two are now repeating,
Mm-hmm.
put yourself and say, I'm sorry. So
Mm.
until you actually come out and do the thing, you won't change. So
Yeah.
if the thing you know to do, do it. No matter how,
Mm-hmm.
and the more you do it, the easier it becomes.
Awesome. Awesome. We're almost at time here, but I will take one or two more questions, P, if that's okay. And this is for someone who their child is already going astray. What can a parent start to do today to restore that connection and to steer them back?
The first and most important thing is prayer. I believe, in the power of intercession, especially the power of intercession of a parent over their child. Because when that child became yours, when God gave that child to you, God also gave you authority over that child. God gave you authority. So you have authority uniquely as the parent of that. So don't discount prayer. And I'm talking about worded prayer now, faith-based prayer. No, God, come back. Not emotional, not going to be crying presence of God. That's not changing anything. Take the scriptures and begin to declare and pray over that child, declaring this is who God says you are. You will align with this and etc. So proper intercession using the word of God. And then depending on how old the child is. So if the child is still relatively young, start no matter how impossible it looks and no matter how much it looks like it's just a drop in the ocean, start putting structures in place. A thing that you wished you had done before. So if, for example, let's say the child is like 7 and they're really scattered, they're not listening at school, or they're not studying or whatever, things along those lines, and you know that you never put routines in place for that child. The child basically just did whatever they liked. Now it's harder because the child is older and it looks more difficult and more impossible. The first time you try to do it, a huge, massive tantrum, you got upset, the child got upset, everybody's like crying, it was just like a mess.
Mm-hmm.
You don't judge by that.
Mm.
You keep going.
Mm.
Little drops eventually become a mighty ocean. You have to be patient enough and believe enough that this thing you're showing, the right thing I'm doing, it will yield results. Don't be impatient. Don't throw it away and say, I do it. Yeah. No, if you do that, you are going to have to go back and start again. So stay with it. Consistency is important. Put structures in place and of course, get educated, go and learn, right? What am I supposed to be doing? For example, I talked about executive skills. A lot of the parents that I work with, most, if not all, had never heard of anything along those lines when it comes to the behavior of a child. You just think the child's just not listening. So you have to get educated, find out, exactly what you need to do, in order to implement that. Those are the two things I would say to definitely start with.
And finally, Pio, what kind of legacy should Christian parents strive to leave, and how do we start building that today?
I mean, legacy can be in different forms, and certainly there's not one legacy. So I can't give one answer to that because it's as unique for each person as much as possible. But I think one important legacy that for me is important for me to leave my children with is not the education, is not the wealth. For me, it's a deep, intimate knowledge of God. Because if a child has that, they're sorted. If a child has if you're able to trust, how the way you know God, God are tight. You have a relationship. Even if things go like haywire, there's something inside you that knows that this thing will work out. God is God. You know that knowledge you have. If you can transfer that to your children, they're sorted. They're sorted, right? No matter, because again, the same way no matter what happens, that it will work out because you just know. It's the same way they would know no matter what they face.
Beautiful, beautiful. This was really rich. This was very deep. This was powerful. It was packed with nuggets, insights, a lot of information that I know would be beneficial to you, the listener, and even me myself. As I listen, I'm like, So obviously this has been just such an awesome time with you, Pio. So thank you so much. We are so thrilled that we had you here on the CEO podcast, and I really appreciate your presence. As we all know, parenting in this generation is no small task. But Pastor reminded us that God equips with the assignment that he has called us to. So no matter where you are in your parenting journey, whether you're just starting out, whether you're struggling, or whether you're standing strong, there is hope and there's help and there's healing. Again, if this episode blessed you, please share with someone. Obviously, leave comments down below and stay tuned for more transformational conversations right here on the CEO podcast. All of Pastor Olawunmi's contact details and information will be in the show notes. So please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. She's a wealth of resource that I know will be a blessing to you. So until next time, lead with love, live with vision, and parent with purpose. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.